He mopped the floors. They laughed at him. But when the black belt called the janitor out to spar, what happened next left the entire dojo in stunned silence. The fluorescent lights hummed above the mat, as if they too were holding their breath. It was Thursday evening at Phoenix Dojo, a martial arts gym nestled between a hardware store and a mechanic's garage in East Oakland. Most nights by this hour, the mats were empty and quiet, just the echo of strikes and shouts fading into memory. But tonight the advanced class had gone late, and with it a thin tension lingered in the air. Near the edge of the mat, a janitor mopped quietly. His name tag read, Malcolm. His movements were slow, steady, deliberate. A man at peace, or at least trying to be. Until a voice shattered the calm. "Hey, you there. How about a quick demo?" The shout came from the center of the mat, where Kyle Brennan stood with his hands on his hips, black belt knotted perfectly, ego twice as tight. Malcolm Reeves looked up slowly, blinking behind his thin glasses. He was 42 lean beneath the loose-fitting custodial polo, and had been working there less than a month. He said nothing. "I'm serious, man," Kyle grinned, gesturing dramatically to his group of 8 students who were half watching, half pretending not to. "Bet you've never seen a real fight in your life. Might learn something tonight." Malcolm bent down to work a scuff from the floor. "Not here to disrupt your class, sir. Just finishing up so you can get back to it." Kyle let out a theatrical laugh. "You hear that doesn't even want to step on the mat." A few students laughed nervously. 1 or 2 looked away. Kyle stepped closer. "Come on, man. Just a little demo. You ever even seen a guard stance? I'll go easy on you." Malcolm sighed quietly. There was a time not so long ago when this exact moment would have triggered something dangerous in him. But not tonight. Not yet. Kyle clapped his hands. "Everyone circle up. You're about to see the difference between someone who trains and someone who just scrubs sweat off the mats." Malcolm stood slowly. His mop clicked against the bucket as he set it aside. His movements were unhurried but graceful. Almost too graceful. "All right," he said, voice calm. "But when we're done, I want you to apologize. Not to me. To them." Kyle scoffed. "You'll be the one apologizing to the floor." What no one there knew, not Kyle, not the students, not even the quiet girl in the corner who watched everything, was that Malcolm Reeves had once gone by another name. Silent Storm, 5-time MMA world champion. A man who vanished at the height of his fame, carrying the weight of a tragedy that ended one career and nearly ended him. He had sworn never to fight again. But some promises were made in peace, and some were broken in the face of arrogance. Kyle rolled his shoulders, feeding off the attention. "Let's make this quick. Guard up, Malcolm. I guard. Show the class what a mop handler's stance looks like." Malcolm stepped onto the mat. He didn't bow, he didn't posture, he didn't speak. But something about the way he stood, feet rooted, shoulders relaxed, gaze steady, made the air in the dojo change. Kyle's grin faltered for the first time. And then, in the quiet that followed, everyone forgot what belts meant. Because something far older than discipline had entered the room, and it stood in silence. Malcolm didn't move. He stood at the edge of the mat, hands loose by his sides, his breathing quiet and even. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't scowling. He simply existed in the space, present, steady. Kyle bounced on his toes. The students had formed a loose half-circle, some with their arms crossed, others whispering quietly. One girl, Ava Tran, watched from the back of the room, her eyes locked on Malcolm's stance. "Ready when you are," Kyle said, raising his fists. Still, Malcolm didn't move. Kyle lunged forward. A playful jab meant more to impress than it hurt. Malcolm sidestepped without lifting his hands. The jab sliced through empty air. The janitor didn't counter. He didn't react. He just watched. Kyle laughed. Okay. You got some reflexes. Not bad for a guy pushing a mop. Malcolm said nothing. The second jab came faster, sharper. Malcolm leaned back just far enough. Again, Kyle missed. But this time Malcolm tilted his head slightly. His eyes met Kyle's for the first time. And something shifted. A chill slithered down Kyle's spine. He didn't understand it, couldn't name it. But it was there. He feinted left, then shot forward with a real jab-cross-hook combo. Crisp, practiced, controlled, and none of it landed. Malcolm moved like water. Effortless. Efficient. He wasn't attacking, but he wasn't being hit either. The students grew quiet. Even those who had chuckled before were now watching with narrowed eyes. Something was off. Kyle stopped, hands up. "What are you doing, dance class? Come on, fight." Malcolm blinked once. "You're trying to hurt me. I'm trying not to let you embarrass yourself." A low "ooh" rippled through the students. Kyle's ears turned red. He snarled and surged forward this time, throwing a high kick. It never landed. Malcolm didn't block it. He stepped inside the arc, placing a single palm on Kyle's chest, redirecting him mid-motion. Kyle stumbled off balance. Gasps echoed around the gym. Malcolm stepped back, feet steady. "Balance before power, you forgot that." You arrogant Kyle lunged again. Malcolm moved once, just once, and Kyle was on the ground. No one saw exactly how it happened. 1 second the instructor was upright. The next he was flat on his back, staring at the ceiling. Silence. Complete. Then Ava spoke. "What?" Was that Malcolm turned his head, slowly scanning the room. "I used to fight," he said. "A long time ago. I stopped when someone I loved paid the price for me losing control." Kyle groaned, pushing himself up. "You humiliated me," he muttered. Malcolm shook his head. "No." "You did that?" "I just stopped you from hurting someone next time." Ava stepped forward. "You're not just a janitor." "No," Malcolm said. "But I've tried to be." From the floor, Kyle blinked up at him. "Who are you?" Malcolm didn't answer. He simply stepped off the mat, picked up his mop, and returned to the stain he had left unfinished. And just like that, he disappeared again. But the silence he left behind, that stayed. Ava Tran sat alone in the locker room long after the others had left. Her duffel bag rested on the bench beside her, forgotten. The buzz of the vending machine was the only sound, but her mind was racing. She had trained at Phoenix Dojo for nearly 3 years. She knew what precision looked like. She knew what restraint felt like. But what she'd seen that night, that wasn't textbook. That was something else. Malcolm Reeves wasn't just calm. He was trained. Beyond trained. Honed. Sharpened by something far older than the drills they practiced in class. She'd seen the way he breathed, the way he centered himself. There were layers to that man. She pulled out her phone. No social media profiles, no fight videos, nothing. It made her more curious. The next afternoon, Ava returned to the dojo early. Malcolm was there, quietly restocking cleaning supplies in the back. His head was down, focused, until he noticed her. "You're early," he said, his voice as even as always. "So are you." He smirked faintly. "Place doesn't clean itself." She took a breath. "I looked you up. Couldn't find anything." "I know." Why, Malcolm closed the supply closet, pausing before answering. "Some people chase the spotlight. Some learn to live without it. I'm the second kind." Ava nodded slowly. You weren't just sparring last night. You were teaching. Teaching him. Teaching us. Not my intention. Well, it worked. He leaned against the doorframe. You speak your mind. Not a lot of students do. Not a lot of janitors move like that. He chuckled under his breath. Fair. There was a pause. Then Ava asked more softly, "What happened to you?" Malcolm's smile faded. He looked at the mop bucket as if it held an answer. Once he began, I fought because I needed to win. Then I fought because I was afraid to lose. And then I stopped because someone else lost everything. Ava stayed quiet. She didn't press. After a moment, Malcolm straightened up. I'm not here to reclaim anything. I'm here because sometimes peace looks like pushing a mop. Does it feel like peace? His eyes met hers. Sometimes. Later that night, class resumed as usual. Kyle wasn't there. Rumors swirled he was taking time off. He'd been asked to step back. He was nursing a bruised ego. But something had changed. The energy in the room was different. Calmer, more aware. Students bowed deeper, listened longer, sparred with more attention. And in the corner, mop in hand, Malcolm cleaned quietly. But not invisibly. Not anymore. Long before he was Malcolm Reeves' janitor at Phoenix Dojo, he was Malcolm Silent Storm Reyes, undefeated, unshakable, unstoppable. His name had filled arenas. Commentators used to say he fought like wind, impossible to catch yet devastating in motion. No trash talk, no theatrics, just power disguised in silence. For nearly a decade, he dismantled opponents in the cage with a level of technical mastery that bordered on eerie. And then he disappeared. The night of the Fall Classic in Vegas, he was sparring 2 days before the title defense of his career. The lights were dim in the private gym. His training partner, Marcus Hammer Fields, had been his closest friend since their amateur days, all grit, all heart. They were a team, a family. That night they were pushing harder than usual. Malcolm had been distracted not by pressure, but by the crowd outside the cage earlier that week. A drunk sponsor's racist joke that no one called out. A local paper that cropped him out of the promo photos. He had stored it all away. Until he didn't. During a fast-paced exchange, Malcolm threw a spinning back elbow faster than he meant to. It clipped Marcus just under the temple. He went down awkwardly. At first it seemed like just another knockdown. Then Marcus didn't get up. An ambulance, sirens, panic, hours of waiting. Then the silence. The official report called it an accident. No charges filed. The gym issued a statement. Fans grieved. But Malcolm, he disappeared. He walked away from the belt, from the sport, from himself. For years he drifted. Small towns, smaller jobs. Places where no one knew his name, and he could pretend to be something else, someone else. Until a few months ago when a job opening popped up in East Oakland, overnight janitor at a dojo. He'd applied before he even knew why. Now standing in the hallway outside Studio B, he watched Ava finish teaching the kids' class. She moved with focused kindness and something else, a willingness to ask questions others avoided. After class, she walked over. You watch the whole time, I always do. You could teach? I'm not ready. Maybe none of us are. She let the words hang. Malcolm nodded once and turned to leave, but she called after him. Did you ever forgive yourself? He paused. No, he said. But I'm learning how to stop punishing myself. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The dojo lights faded. But inside Malcolm, something was starting to glow again. Not heat, not rage. Just the faintest spark of return. The gym felt different when Kyle Brennan returned. He didn't storm in. He didn't smirk. He just walked quiet, stiff, uncomfortable in his own skin. Word had spread. Maybe not the full truth, but enough of it. The janitor wasn't just a janitor. And Kyle, he wasn't the most respected man in the room anymore. Classes resumed. Kyle taught the basics like he always had, but students listened with half an ear now. Their eyes often drifted toward the back corner where Malcolm mopped in silence. Respect had shifted. Ava noticed the tension building. She also noticed Kyle watching Malcolm too often, too long. Something was coming. That moment arrived on a Friday evening. The class had just wrapped. Students were stretching, laughing, loosening their belts. Kyle stood in front of the mirror, fixing his collar. Then casually, he turned to face the room. "Before we all go," he said, raising his voice, "I want to clarify something." Conversations paused. "There's been a misunderstanding going around. I'm not sure where it started," he said, eyes grazing Malcolm. "But I think it's important to remember that respect in this dojo comes from training, not from hearsay." The room tensed. Ava stepped forward. "Do you want to say what you're actually trying to say?" Kyle exhaled sharply. "Sure. I'm saying that just because someone shows up out of nowhere, does one flashy move, doesn't mean they've earned your deference." Malcolm didn't respond. He just kept cleaning. Ava's voice was calm, and yet every time he walks by, the room gets quieter. That's not a trick. That's presence. Kyle turned fully. "You think he deserves to teach? He doesn't even have a certification. No belt? No class plan? Just a shadow." That was when Ava walked to the middle of the mat and turned to the students. "I'd like to ask something," she said. "Who here has learned something from Malcolm Reeves, even if he never stood at the front of the class?" On one hand went up, then another, then another. Kyle's jaw tightened. "I see," he said. "Well, as long as I'm head instructor, I spoke with the owner," Ava interrupted. "So did Dr. Banks. So did 3 other black belts. You're not head instructor anymore." Kyle froze. Ava turned to Malcolm, who had stopped mopping. "You never asked for this. But we need someone who understands what martial arts are really about. And I think you're the only one here who does." Malcolm didn't move, didn't blink. Kyle broke the silence. "What are you going to do, step up and become what you swore you'd never be again?" For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Malcolm stepped forward. Not fast, not dramatic, just deliberate. He walked to the center of the mat and bowed. "I won't teach for glory," he said quietly. "But I will teach so that no one in this room forgets the purpose of power." And just like that, the dojo shifted again. This time for good. On Monday, the mats were freshly cleaned. The air smelled faintly of lemon oil and chalk. For the first time since the power shift, the room felt still, like the breath right before a movement begins. Malcolm Reeves stood at the front of the dojo. He wore no GI, no black belt, no title. Just a gray shirt, black pants, and bare feet. He didn't raise his voice, didn't call for attention. He simply bowed. And the room fell silent. "Today," he said, "we begin not with technique, but with intention." Students formed a circle. Some seasoned, some new. Ava was there, cross-legged and alert, her notebook nearby. Even Kyle stood along the edge, arms crossed but watching. Malcolm walked slowly along the inside of the circle. "When I was young, I learned to fight to win," he said. "Then I fought so I wouldn't lose. But real martial arts, they start when neither of those matter." He paused in front of a younger student, maybe 12, who flinched slightly when their eyes met. Malcolm crouched. "What are you afraid of when you spar?" the boy swallowed. "Getting hit." Malcolm nodded. "That's fair. And what do you think would happen if you did? I'd lose." "Maybe. Or maybe you'd learn. Or maybe," he turned to the class, "you'd realize that taking a hit isn't the same as being defeated. He stood again. Today's lesson is simple. Control, not of others, of yourself. The class began with breathing. Not forms, not strikes. Breath, hands open, eyes closed, feet grounded. From the outside, it looked like nothing. But to those in the room, something shifted. They trained slowly, deliberately. Malcolm didn't demonstrate much. He asked questions, paused often, corrected less. The room became a place of listening, of noticing, of presence. After class, Ava walked up beside him as he cleaned the mirrors. "You taught without teaching," she said. He smiled faintly. That's the goal. Kyle approached. He still moved with the precision of an instructor, but his voice was lower now. "I didn't know who you were." Malcolm didn't turn. "You didn't need to." "I should have listened. You still can." Kyle looked down. "I'd like to stay. Help. Learn." Malcolm paused, then nodded. "Then start by sweeping the mat." Kyle blinked. Seriously, everyone starts there. Later that evening, the dojo buzzed again with laughter and practice. But at the edge of the room, Kyle swept slowly. Ava taught her first full class. Malcolm cleaned the windows. No one wore belts. But everyone carried something invisible: respect. 2 weeks later, the dojo was full. Not just full of students, but of energy. Word had spread. A few local martial artists dropped in to observe. Parents started attending more classes. There was a waiting list again. But Malcolm felt it. The pull of the past. It came quietly in the form of a stranger leaning against the far wall during warm-ups. Muscular, clean-cut, with the posture of someone who knew exactly what to look for. His eyes followed every movement, not with curiosity, but calculation. After class, the man stepped forward. "You're Malcolm Reeves, right?" Malcolm hesitated. "I used to be." The man offered his hand. "Name's Jordan Keene. I run Valor MMA downtown. We've never met, but I watched you fight." Malcolm didn't shake his hand. Keene continued. "You disappeared. Lot of people wondered why." Malcolm didn't answer. Keene glanced around the dojo. Nice setup. Not much technique in what I saw today, but interesting vibe. Ava approached, towel around her neck. "Something we can help you with?" Keene smiled. "Just checking out the revival tour. Thought maybe you'd want to bring Silent Storm out of retirement for a real seminar. Give the crowd something to talk about." Malcolm's voice was even. "We're not interested." "You sure?" Keene stepped a bit closer. "People don't forget legends. They wait for them. And when they come back, they expect fireworks." A beat passed. "Then they should keep waiting," Malcolm said. Keene chuckled, nodded once, and walked out without another word. But the tremor he left behind echoed through the students. Later that week, Ava found Malcolm in the back room wrapping equipment. "You okay?" He nodded. "Yeah. You sure?" He paused. "I thought I was done with that world. But it keeps knocking." "What if you answered not with fists, but with truth?" Malcolm looked at her. "What do you mean everyone in this city knows what a fight looks like? But not everyone knows what healing looks like. What if you showed them that instead Malcolm considered it?" The next day he wrote something on the whiteboard at the front of the dojo. Friday night, no belts, no ranks, no rules, just honest movement. They called it an open mat. But what happened that night would go far beyond sparring. Friday night arrived with a quiet electricity. The dojo lights were dimmer than usual. No music, no formal bows. Just bodies arriving in silence, stretching, breathing, waiting. Some wore gis, others simple workout clothes. A few came barefoot in jeans. Malcolm stood at the center, arms crossed, saying nothing. He wasn't there to lead. Not this time. He was there to witness. One by one, students took to the mat. No one called pairs. No timer buzzed. They simply moved, flowing sparring, sometimes pausing to ask a question, sometimes collapsing into laughter. It was messy, unpredictable, honest. Kyle rolled lightly, with a beginner guiding instead of overpowering. Ava worked with two younger teens, helping them breathe through fear. Even Jordan Keene returned, standing at the edge with arms folded. He didn't spar, but he watched. Halfway through the night, the room parted slightly. Ava stepped forward. She motioned to Malcolm. A few heads turned. Whispers passed. He shook his head once, but then he stepped onto the mat. No stance, no gloves, just presence. Ava bowed lightly. Not to challenge, she said, to learn. They moved. Slow at first, experimental. Two rivers meeting. Ava threw a light strike, and Malcolm redirected it with the gentlest contact. She smiled. Came again. This time a sweep. He stepped past it, tapped her shoulder. Their spar turned into something else, almost like dance. The students circled quietly, watching two energies find balance. One carried experience like weight. The other brought curiosity like wind. Ava slipped once. Malcolm caught her elbow. She grinned. You're still teaching. Always, he said. When they stopped, the room erupted in quiet claps. Not loud, not cheering, just acknowledgement. Jordan approached afterward. That wasn't fighting. No, Malcolm replied. That was the point. Jordan nodded slowly. You're building something different here. We are. That night, after the last students left, Malcolm stayed behind to turn off the lights. He stood at the center of the mat one last time. For the first time in years, he bowed to the room. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And in that simple gesture, something closed, and something else opened. The invitation came in a white envelope slipped under the front door of the dojo. Inside a single, embossed card. International Martial Arts Conference Guest Panel. The Legacy of Modern Fighters Speaker Invitation. Malcolm Silent Storm Reeves. Ava found it first. She read it twice, then walked it into Malcolm's office, really just a back room with an old desk and too many kettlebells stacked by the wall. They want you to speak, she said, placing the envelope on the desk. Malcolm looked at it like it might bite him. I haven't been that name in a long time. They haven't forgotten. I didn't leave quietly so I could come back loudly. They're asking, not demanding. He didn't answer. The next few days, the envelope stayed untouched. Classes continued. Students trained. Malcolm taught more openly now, demonstrating forms, giving lectures on breath and balance. Kyle had taken on beginners. Ava had launched a mentorship circle for girls. Something was working. But the envelope lingered. One night after locking up, Malcolm sat on the mat, alone. The room dark, except for a single strip of light beneath the back door. He held the card in his hands. He didn't want fame. He didn't miss crowds. But he thought of Marcus, of what Marcus would say. And he knew. A week later, Malcolm stepped onto a stage in San Diego. Not in a suit, not in a GI, just jeans, a black t-shirt, and bare hands. He stood before hundreds of students, fighters, instructors. He didn't speak about championships. He spoke about loss, about guilt, about walking away from noise so you can hear your own breath again. About a little dojo in Oakland and a young woman named Ava who reminded him that sometimes legacy isn't what you leave behind, but what you help lift up. And when he finished, there was no standing ovation, just silence. The same kind that filled Phoenix Dojo that night, months ago. The kind that meant something was finally understood. And in that silence, Malcolm Reeves reclaimed his name. Not as a storm, but as a calm. The seasons changed quietly in Oakland. Summer gave way to fall, and the dojo settled into rhythm. The whiteboard filled with new class schedules. The mat, once full of tension, now held movement that breathed with unity. Ava led more sessions. Kyle mentored younger boys, who once feared speaking up. The broom passed from hand to hand, student to student, a silent rite of passage. Malcolm taught less, not because he was tired, but because they were ready. He spent more time in the back office now, writing notes, shaping ideas. Not a curriculum, a philosophy. He called it stillness within motion. One afternoon, Ava found him sitting on the front steps, watching the neighborhood hum around them. "You thinking about stepping back?" she asked. He smiled. "Thinking about stepping aside. You've built something beautiful." "No," he said. "We did." She looked at him, then sat down. "I had a dream last night. You were back in the cage. Arena, lights, noise, and you weren't fighting. Just standing there, and everyone was watching. What was I doing? Breathing. And somehow, that was enough." Malcolm nodded slowly. That weekend, during a community open house, the youngest students performed a short demonstration. No belts, no chants. Just quiet movement paired and fluid grounded in trust. A small boy stumbled. The others waited. He stood back up. The room clapped once, soft and full. Afterward, the boy ran to Malcolm. "I messed up." Malcolm knelt beside him. "No," he said. "You returned." The next morning, Malcolm unlocked the dojo early. The light poured in through the windows like a quiet blessing. He walked to the center of the mat. He bowed, and this time when he stood, he didn't walk away. He just stood, still, breathing. And in the stillness, he smiled. Because the storm had passed, and the strength was never in the silence. It was in what came after. Not every victory ends with a roar. Sometimes it ends in quiet, in a bow, in a breath, in a choice not to fight, but to stand. If this story stayed with you, let it live on. Subscribe to the channel for more true stories about quiet strength, unexpected courage, and the power of second chances. And remember, some storms pass not with noise, but with stillness.